But what I think is a little silly is for us to spend a whole lot of time agonizing over the fall of Kobani, and then after Kurdish security forces, with the backing of American coalition fighters, retake that village, drive ISIL forces out, and everybody decides that that's not really a big deal either. So I think I guess the thing is we have to sort of decide what our approach to these issues is going to be. Are we going to light our hair on fire every time that there is a setback in the campaign against ISIL?
You know, if those of you who were watching yesterday recall, I did a whole Gimme 5 segment on that outrageous, disgusting statement by the White House spokesman, Josh Earnest. And then also, I think either today or yesterday, John McCain really blasted it on the floor of the Senate. Joining us now is Jed Babbin, contributing editor for the American Spectator, former Undersecretary of Defense for President George H.W. Bush, and co-author of the Sunni Vanguard. There it is on your screen. Jed, thank you as always. You know, that remark is so flippant and so outrageous and so disrespectful. And on Memorial Day weekend coming up, and believe me, you're not going to hear an apology. They're not going to think twice about what he said.
Well, they never do. I mean, they don't think about what they say in advance. Why should they think about what they said afterward? You know, we had Kobani. Now you have Palmyra in Syria falling to ISIS. You have Ramadi in Iraq falling to ISIS. You know, you basically have ISIS ruling roughly a third or close to a half of Iraq and about the same amount in Syria. So are we serious about getting rid of them? No. Should we be? At this point, I'm not even sure, Steve. I think this is the Arabs' fight. They ought to be fighting it, not us.
Well, two things along those lines. Today, the president said, I do not think we're losing. I guess talking about the war on ISIS, which I'm sure you'll agree with me, we are losing just based on what you just said. But the second part, which you might agree with the president on, is he said if the Iraqis aren't willing to fight, we cannot do it for them. But they also always throw in, it's the same thing they've been throwing in since the beginning. They live in this fantasy world, Jeb, where if only the Sunnis and the Shia, if everybody was represented in an Iraqi government, what, ISIS is going to go away? They're going to stop cutting the heads off of Christians? They're going to stop advancing and taking and expanding the caliphate? So I don't understand that part of it at all.
Well, you're not meant to, because it's not meant to make any sense, Steve. I mean, frankly, there are no Iraqis. There are Shia, there are Sunni, there are Kurds. There is no one over there who really thinks of himself as an Iraqi first and any of those other categories second. It's always those first and maybe Iraq second. There is no nation of Iraq. There really hasn't ever been. And this whole exercise of trying to save the Iraqi government, I don't know why it's our business at this point. I really, truly don't. The Arab nations are supposed to defend themselves. They have the interest. We frankly don't. They are there. We are here. Why we should get back into this beats the hell out of me.
All right. Well, of course, you know, some would argue that you know, we can't stand by and watch ISIS, you know, kill Christians and slaughter Christians and watch Christians and the artifacts, the historical artifacts in Syria and all over the place. And I mean, if we leave them unchecked, they will advance to Italy. They will send their people not just by computer messages, but they'll send their people here if they're not already here, you know, to begin with.
Well, let me just ask those people, and I know you're not one of them.
Well, sometimes I am, but go ahead.
Then you ought to answer this question.
Yeah.
How many American lives do we spend to save Iraqi artifacts?
No, I'm just lumping that in with everything they're doing. I mean, there's a mission, and they're going to expand and expand and expand, and I just don't know how we could sit by and watch, you know, Christians be systematically, you know, eliminated. Well, it's just very painful. As a Jew, it's very painful.
I agree with that. But the fact of the matter is, we can't, you know, it goes back to what my father used to talk about in 1958. You know, we can't be the policeman of the entire world. It's time other nations pulled up their pants and get into the game and be responsible. They are more threatened. Saudi Arabia is more threatened. God knows. They're fighting the Houthis not very well. The Jordanians are very well threatened by ISIS, and they made a very big effort, and it was not just a trivial effort at all. After their pilot got burned alive by ISIS, but they petered out. The Arabs are indolent people. They do not really have the energy or the will to do these things. So I just question whether it's our interest really to defend them. We can defend Israel. Yep. I don't see why we need to defend the Arab nations. They're so rich, many of them, They ought to be doing this themselves.
No, and I do not disagree that they have more to lose and they're in closer proximity and everything you said. And by the way, they really have no interest in defending the Christians, any Christian population whatsoever, in my view. Let's move on to very quickly the answers that we've been getting from Republican candidates regarding the war in Iraq. And I think Marco Rubio and to some extent Jeb Bush. And I mean, I think the answer, you can't just give a blanket answer that it was a mistake and we never should have done it. I just don't think that you got to give a caveat to that. Otherwise, you're spitting on in the graves of all those who died, I believe.
I don't think so. You know, I would be the last person to ever do that. But think about what George Bush was, not George Bush, Jeb Bush was asked. You know, knowing what we know now, was it a mistake? Obviously it was. Iran is stronger. Saddam Hussein has gone, but in his place is complete chaos. Same thing in Libya. Muammar Gaddafi is gone, and in its place is a terrorist state. You know, what do we have as a result? If we are not willing to try to make a result that we can live with, you know, we shouldn't be doing anything at all. And the point really comes down to, this is a result we shouldn't have to live with.
Right.
Again, I come back to the point, the Arab nations, Saudi Arabia has a terrific Air Force. You know, they have the ability to hit ISIS.
No doubt. They have to do. They absolutely have to do their part. Jeb, we're out of time. Have a great weekend, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, you too.
All right, folks. We are about to bring back our viewer call-in segment here on the Steve Malzberg Show. So if you want to participate in that and speak to me on the air, you have to reach out to us first, and you do that by emailing us. Send an email to callsteve@newsmax.com. Callsteve@newsmax.com.